Warning, the following program is designed for casual wrestling fans and is meant purely for entertainment. If you're SAWFT, proceed at your own risk. Viewer discretion is advised.
Brother, I'm going on a wild Hulk Hogan. If all I get's a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars, trying to kick out of this joke, but it's no holds barred. Middle fingers like I'm Stone Cold.
What is good, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy WETOODEEP, and we are back with another episode of the Slappin' Meat Wrestling podcast. As promised, we are doing a Saturday night main event discussion video, right? I'm just going to sort of break down sort of my thoughts on this show. Try not to go too long. Let's just jump in at the beginning, right? So, I don't know about you all, but I came in with certain expectations for this this TV special, right? I came in with this sort of understanding of what this was going to be, right? And I feel like most fans should have known what was going to happen considering what this was. This was an overproduced, glorified house show. And that's all this was ever going to be. That's all this was ever going to be. Was an overproduced, glorified house show. Any other one of these, right? It's just a fun night to watch some sort of wrestling. And for WWE to get this on NBC to sort of expose maybe a different audience to the product, they brought out, Pat McAfee. They brought, they tried to get that nostalgia act going in. And I'm not quite certain how successful it is. Obviously, we'll see in the coming days when the ratings drop. I think weekend ratings drop on Monday. I could be wrong, though. I'm not exactly certain. And so I will say from the jump, like, there was a part of me that was super pumped when the intro of the episode started playing and they redid it with the current superstars and all of that was cool, right? But if we right, what essentially started happening, at least within the community that I'm in wrestling, is that, like, we initially started saying, well, this is a good event. Like, from the get, we didn't even let the matches happen yet. We didn't allow the booking to happen. All that people were really excited for was that nostalgia, right? And that's sort of the danger, and I'll call out the casual fan base for a minute here. That's the danger of the casual community, is that I always say when it comes to booking, like, Triple H pulls out like bells and whistles and trinkets that he's allowed to put out there, and people will give him his flowers. And that's what this was. He pulls out the nostalgia from the 80s, and he brings out the winged eagle belt, which we'll talk about in the main event. And he'll pull out Jesse Ventura, who did a very good job on commentary, I might add, whether it was at the desk with Tessitore or actually in the main event as the heel commentator, which goes back to one of my first points. Just watching that main event, we had 3 commentators. WWE needs to go back to a 3 commentary desk team, right? You need to have your unbiased, Michael Cole, right? And then you need to have the heel, Jesse Ventura, and then Pat McAfee play the face, right? Or in some way, shape, or form, Michael Cole, what really actually happened was it was more like the unbiased party was Pat McAfee. Cole was sort of the sort of glazer of Cody Rhodes, right? He was the face commentator, and Ventura was the heel commentator, right? And Pat was sort of just that unbiased third party, which I actually think Pat plays that role the best. Like, imagine at Netflix though, you get a 3-team desk where you have like Pat McAfee as that third party unbiased, Michael Cole is the heel, and you get someone like a Corey Graves or a Wade Barrett, who both have been heels in their wrestling careers, but also in their commentary careers, and have like a heel Wade Barrett. That would be pretty fun, right? I think we need to have a 3-person team commentary with sort of like a heel and face scenario, right? So like imagine with like NXT just throwing like Byron Saxton on that table, and having like, the problem with NXT is like Booker T sort of flips depending on who's on the screen, right? So like when Roxanne's on the screen, like, because they've sort of booked Roxanne as like being connected to Booker T, when Roxanne's a heel, he's a heel, right? When Roxanne's on the screen, but then Trick Williams will come out and he's a face, right? And so that's, again, I'm not complaining about it. I still think that's the best commentary booth in wrestling right now. But having a 3-team commentary for that main event really made it feel sort of old school in the way wrestling should, in my opinion, should be. Should bring back like a heel JBL. That would be fun. So with that being said, let's break down the matches. So first off, we went about the first 10 minutes of this thing with no action, right? It was just promo and again, I'm not complaining. And so just from an overall thought, we got what we should have expected, right? If you expected a PLE, you're wrong, right? This was 100% designed to do one thing. It was a house show designed to sort of maybe get an audience that typically doesn't watch to watch. And depending on what the numbers are, like, that's what I'm interested in. And the only reason I care about rating numbers for this event is I want to see, like, did this draw any non-watcher of the product to watch, right? I'm going to go on a limb and say it didn't. You had the Heisman ceremony going on with it, so your sports bro isn't not going to watch the Heisman to watch wrestling. That's just not going to happen. And so, yeah. So let's break this down. So we start with Drew and Sammy, which it was a decent match. I felt Drew McIntyre should have just went out there and completely squashed Sami Zayn, just personally. But Sammy's sort of in protected mode where, like, he can't lose. Like, Triple H has something in Sami Zayn's booking. I don't know what it is, why he does it this way, where, like, no one can squash Sami Zayn. Sammy's always, Sammy has in his story where he's that underdog that's going to fight to the end even if he loses, right? And he can't get squashed, right? I didn't hate the match. It was pretty, average, but it's your typical house show match, right? Knowing this should have been Bronson Reed versus Seth Rollins, sort of like rubber match that ended the feud, it makes you yearn for that, but I understand injuries happen. And I'm a big Drew McIntyre fan now. Drew, like, and I was before, but like, this version of Drew's the best since he's returned to WWE. And I'm 100% like, if I could get my wish, if I jumped into WWE booking and they're like, hey, you're the head guy now, you get to make the call. I said, well, here would be the two things. We need to figure out a way to make Drew McIntyre World Heavyweight Champion and Kevin Owens as Universal Champion. That's my two demands. We got to get there by WrestleMania. How we get there, let's figure that out to make it make sense. But that's what I want by WrestleMania, would be Drew McIntyre and Kevin Owens representing the company. Like, can you imagine if WWE just for a second went like completely dark and like all their champions were heels? Like, and I'm talking about like disastrous heels, not like Roman Reigns heels, where because there's a difference in different type of like being a heel, right? So you have like Roman Reigns heel, where he was just sort of he sort of was just like a dictator, right? He had like control of the company, but he really didn't do necessarily anything bad. He wasn't like a chicken shit heel, but he was more of just like an emperor, right? And then there's like your chicken shit heels, and then you have like Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens style, like the John Moxley style heel, like that. You know, if we want to bring in AEW, one of the very few things about AEW that I appreciate right now in their storytelling is John Moxley. But go figure that it's the ex-WWE guy with a bunch of ex-WWE guys in his faction, with Claudio, Marina Shafir was in NXT at one point. You know, Yuto's getting good training. He's pretty good, right? But that faction, I think they're called the Death Riders, probably the only thing in AEW right now that I'm a big fan of. Just because of the sort of chaos that they're creating. And I think you know, Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre can offer that. Can you imagine like a faction of like Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, who have just been completely insane because of the bloodline whole story? Because essentially both of them are attacking people who are associated with the bloodline, right? Drew McIntyre's whole story is, I got to clear the people. If you associate yourself with the bloodline, I have to attack you. Kevin Owens' whole story against Cody Rhodes is that he partnered with the bloodline. They have the same story. And I complain a lot about Triple H being uncreative, and this is another example of that. But I think this is an example where you can put them on the same path, to where ultimately the only decision you have is to tag them together in a faction of people who right, and they could bring together some sort of faction out of this. And Triple H loves his faction, so I think maybe that's where we're headed. You know, think of a faction of like Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre. When Bronson Reed comes back, he would fit in, right? But he's sort of part of the new bloodline. And so, like, I can't think of anyone right now off of but like, imagine like McIntyre and Owens get together and say, bro, we have the same goal. Let's try to recruit some of these some people to join us against destroying the bloodline. Like, imagine like a Braun Breaker joining this group. Bro, that would be pretty crazy. So I didn't hate McIntyre versus Sammy. I just felt that it was your standard Monday Night Raw type match. And I mean, it was mid. It was what it was, and then so we'll move on from it, right? And so by moving on, we move on to Io versus Liv Morgan, which was a decent match for what it was, right? There was no way in hell Io Sky was winning this match. There was just no way that was happening, right? Liv Morgan does retain. It looks like she broke her nose, which can play into a character or a story arc here as well. That I'm sure they'll use that as some sort of story plot. We get the stare down at the end of the segment, with Rhea coming out staring down Liv. Guys, from the jump, like, y'all had to know this was going to be the Royal Rumble match. It's going to be Liv. It's going to be Rhea. I think Rhea gets her comeuppance here. Rhea wins the title back, and I have a very good suspicion that Bianca Belair is in line for a title push, right? Because Rhea Ripley winning the title means that a heel needs to come at it, right? And just everything happening, the way they're telling this Jade Cargill story, right? It's just telling me Bianca Belair is the one who pushed her, right? And that's going to be the story, and that Bianca Belair. So something can happen here, right? Because the rumor is that Jade is actually somewhat like legitimately hurt in some way, shape, or form, right? And so imagine this story, right? Rhea Ripley beats Liv Morgan at the Royal Rumble. Rhea Ripley becomes the women's champion, right? Bianca Belair, either one of the two, wins Elimination Chamber or wins the Royal Rumble. Either of the two. I think it will be the Elimination Chamber. Personally, just because I believe Charlotte Flair's winning the Royal Rumble. But either of the two. So either I'm confident the two women's championship matches will be Tiffany versus Charlotte and Bianca versus Rhea. I'm confident that's what we're doing for WrestleMania. How we get there, who wins Rumble, who wins Elimination Chamber, I don't necessarily think it matters. I think just for the sake of, I'm actually thinking about it, the way I would tell this story, if I'm being honest, which is why I felt like Charlotte needed to have at least showed her face again, would be have Bianca win the Rumble, have Charlotte come out, and, you know, she shows back up, Tiffany cashes in, Charlotte shows up. I mean, we could still do it this way. This just needs to be done before the Rumble, right? Where Charlotte shows back up, stares down Tiffany Stratton, and then shows up at the Rumble, doesn't win it. Just say Bianca wins it, but then everyone else on the SmackDown roster goes to Nick Aldis and say, well, it's not fair that she gets to come out and just stare down Tiffy, and then all of a sudden she's automatically in the title hunt. She needs to earn her way. And Nick Aldis says, you know what? You're absolutely correct. You're right. We're going to put her in Elimination Chamber where she has to beat 5 other women, and then she does. I think that will be the better story to me, right? And so let's have Rio beat Liv at Rumble, have Bianca win the Rumble, right? So have Bianca Belair win the Royal Rumble, right? And I know, so a lot of people will be like, well, man, the Rumble's supposed to be the spot for the up-and-comer, right? The person who's not at that spot, who's next in line. Now, that's not how Triple H is using this spot, right? Triple H is not booking in the Vince McMahon way. Triple H has booked Cody Rhodes to win the Rumble. His 2 Rumbles, he's been in full control, right? Because it's about the story, right? So the story is going to be the long-awaited Bianca Belair Rhea Ripley match. Bianca Belair wins the title at WrestleMania, right? Sort of seemingly turns heel, because she will now be the heel in this story, right? Turns heel. It's announced. It's broadcasted to the world that she has turned on Jade, that she was the one that pushed her. So she's the heel. She ends up being the champion. Maybe has to, you know, it gets broadcasted. First title match, you know, something that like a Backlash could be against Naomi, right? She gets through Naomi, right? So she goes through the spring as champion, right? And then we get to around Money in the Bank, or after Money in the Bank, that sort of 2-month build towards SummerSlam. And Jade Cargill returns. And she comes after Bianca Belair. Because Jade versus Bianca has more of a SummerSlam feel to me anyway. Where it's not quite the level of a WrestleMania match in terms of, right? But so then you have Jade come out. Jade versus Bianca for the title at SummerSlam. And that's when Jade wins the title. And that's the ultimate payoff of what would be like an 8-month build, right? Jade versus Bianca at SummerSlam, 2025. Jade wins the title. You can continue the feud past it if you want it to, but there's really no need for it. Where you go from there, not exactly certain. But Bianca Belair does need another title run. It's been about 2 years. Have her have from April to August a 4 or 5 month title reign where she goes against the Naomi. Maybe she goes against some up and comers like Roxanne Perez or something, right? Excuse me, goes against like the Blair Davenports and has a decent title run. But the ultimate story is her versus Jade. When that Jade appearance, say at a Money in the Bank pay-per-view, maybe Bianca retains and Jade comes back and attacks her from behind or whatever, right? That's the ultimate payoff, right? So that's how I would book this, right? Excuse me. Third match was Gunther, Damian, and Finn. Again, I told you when we made predictions on Tuesday, this match was very simple to tell you how it was going to go down. This is ultimately to set up Finn versus Damian at whether it's Rumble, whether it's Mania, somewhere down the line, that's going to be the match. Damian versus Finn for like the ultimate grudge match, right? Excuse me. Not much to say here, right? Some people liked it. The pacing felt nice because it was a 2-hour show. They didn't get the opportunities to sort of like spread out matches and run that slow pace. And so this was a really fun night in that the matches, were 10-minute matches, but the spots had to happen pretty close together. You couldn't space things out. There was no time to sort of just walk around and build up the crowd in the way like a Roman Reigns would do in his match, right? The fourth match for the first ever women's United States champion, it went again exactly the way it was supposed to go, right? Like I don't think Michael Cole mentions the dumpster match, which is exactly what this whole story falls out of. Chelsea looks like she's going to lose. Meechin looks really good in the match. Looks strong, right? Chelsea wins the title, guys. Because initially, so like I liked the idea that Notorious Nerdy D, who's going to be a guest this upcoming Tuesday, he came with a good idea on his podcast on Wednesday. What if Tiffy cashes in on Chelsea? And that's right. And I liked the idea, but I'm going to stick with my gut feeling here. Especially with how the sort of lasting scene of this match was Chelsea on the shoulder of Piper. But and several things happened in this match, right? Piper attacking Meechin on the outside when the ref wasn't looking, sort of beating her down, right? Certain things in this match tells me I know exactly where the story's headed. I know exactly where the story's going. And that is Piper is going to turn on Chelsea. Because in the same way you got like a heel Tiffany Stratton right now, but she's a fan favorite, so you got to turn her face. The same thing's happening to Chelsea. You have a heel Chelsea Green who the crowd absolutely loves. And so they're doing the same sort of, again, it's Triple H recognizing patterns and running the same sort of story plot points. It's not the same stories, but it's the same plot points. It's the big girl against the smaller blonde crowd favorite, right? It's the same fucking story, right? So somewhere down the line, but the difference of the two is that Chelsea isn't Tiffany and that Chelsea has a title. Tiffany doesn't have the title, but has the way to get the title. Essentially what I'm saying is this is leading to Piper turning on Chelsea. And whether it's a Mania match, I don't, when we did our predictions on Tuesday for what Mania could be, I didn't have this title on the card because I don't think they're going to treat it like a Mania style card. This is going to happen the Friday before Mania, right? That, you can't have when you have as many titles as WWE has, you're not going to get every single title on the card. And I did my best to put every single title on the card, but the 2 women's mid card and the women's tag team. But this match will probably be like the Friday before WrestleMania type feel, right? Excuse me. But it's going to be Piper versus Chelsea. That's going to be the first major feud for this title, will be Piper versus Chelsea. Where I ultimately believe Piper Niven will get over for a while, right? And so, again, I'm really seeing a picture where you could have WWE like controlled by the heels, right? Have Kevin beat Cody, have Drew beat Gunther, have Piper beat Chelsea, Bianca beat Rhea, right? And you can have like a lot of heel champions and have like I don't know. That's just the way. I don't know. As I've grown older and started watching more wrestling, the longer that I watch, I used to be like super heel or super face, right? Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, excuse me. The Roman Reigns when he was first, 2015, 2016 Roman Reigns. Those were my guys, right? I was the super face, right? I couldn't stand the bad guys, right? But the more that I watch, and a lot of the reason why I couldn't stand the bad guys was that Vince booked super stereotypical, like wrestling character bad guys that didn't really fit with human nature, right? But also Vince did a very good job at building Daniel Bryan as like the crowd favorite, right? He did a very good job of creating those moments, right? But the more I watch, and Triple H books a little differently, where like he makes the heels feel personable, which is why like I can understand Kevin Owens and why he turned on Cody. I can fully understand it, right? I can understand Drew McIntyre's entire point of view with why he's acting the way he's acting, right? Which leads us to the main event, which I thought could have possibly been a title change. I would not have been surprised if Kevin Owens won the title. But he didn't. But here's my sort of first off, the match itself was pretty normal. Wasn't, these are 2 guys who know the indie style. They didn't really have an indie style match, which I appreciated, because I feel like there was a temptation to put on an AEW style like spot fest, and they didn't do that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that they have the self-awareness to understand that that's not what was needed in this match. And so I didn't hate it at all. I'm not a big fan of the finish, and I'll tell you why. Cody used a chair, right? He's the super baby face. Now, I don't hate it as much as I think a lot of other people do, right? Because the claim is what? Cody cheated, right? There's a reason I put those words on the thumbnail of this episode. Cody cheated, because that's what, quite literally, the community I am. Someone literally posted those. Oh, Cody cheated. Right? Now, I have 2 feelings about this. The first one is I 100% enjoy this. Here's why. I did that episode, it was early in the year, where I talked about like we could get like a version of Cody Rhodes that wins the title and is sort of paranoid, and so he starts doing heel things to maintain the title. And that I would be thoroughly enjoying of that, right? What if this ultimately turns into Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, Kevin Owens faction of just diabolical heels? Talk about swerves. That would be a swerve. What if that's what we get? Is this sort of faction of, because Cody Rhodes used heel methods, but he also just used common fucking sense. The refs are out. this is going to knock Kevin Owens out. Why the fuck would I not use the chair? Right? So I don't hate Cody for using the chair. I don't. But I also just like, y'all have put me through what? May, June, July, August, September, October, November. 8 months now of Cody Rhodes' boring ass storyline and bullshit. I could be at like a 1,600 day title run with Roman Reigns, but nah, y'all needed to finish some stupid ass story these Cody crybabies did, right? You could have Roman Reigns could have added some more victims to his list here. I'm not really, there's people who are like downhard Roman Reigns fans that will claim that. I'm not upset at it. Cody needed to win the title at Mania, right? To continue the story, right? To get the solo Roman story that we all love right now. I'm not mad at that. I'm really not. I'm not. I just, part of me believes, and I'm holding out some hope here, that this is going to lead to a more sort of tweener Cody Rhodes, because here's why I don't like Cody Rhodes, right? I don't like Cody Rhodes the same reason I didn't like John Cena. He's that squeaky clean. Come on now, like you can't tell me not once, Cody, you decide you want it to right, and we see the first little crack. We see this first little crack in Cody Rhodes where he decides to take the heelish way to maintain victory. Right. But my biggest takeaway from this is the most interesting thing to come out of this entire night wasn't even shown on TV. It was once the cameras turned off and Kevin Owens got back in the ring and attacked Cody Rhodes and gave him the pile driver. And Cody got stretchered out. And then Kevin got in an altercation with Triple H on the stage. Bro, that's the most interesting 2 minutes of the night. And it's not on TV. And I don't know if it was because NBC didn't want to show the pile driver or if they wanted to sort of. I feel like what they're doing is they're trying to like set up like Kevin Owens to be like just the way they're setting him up as a character is like he's sort of unhinged and does whatever the hell he wants to do when he wants to do it. And so it makes sense within the. But guys, all you AEW marks who are going to be out here and like, oh, this is just how they're gonna, because I've even conjured up a theory that okay, maybe this is how they fire him, right? But Notorious Nerdy D really did bring up a very good point. You don't build up Kevin Owens to be the best version of himself to ship him out the door, right? You ship him out on his back, stretch like if Kevin Owens wasn't going to leave this event as a WWE superstar, you don't have him attack Cody Rhodes to begin with, right? He lost the match. He goes out on a loss. You don't build up the competitor, right? Same thing they did with Ricky, right? Ricochet went out through the glass, right? He gets stretchered out, and we never see him again, right? You don't build up for the competition, right? And so, yeah, that's a very good point. Kevin Owens is re-signed, and this is about to be this year's version, potentially, of what Punk and McIntyre was this year. Next year could be Kevin versus Cody Rhodes, with the potentiality of like a Randy Orton involvement. It got me real hyped for what could be next year. But yeah, like that crazy moment there. I want to know if maybe do they mention this on next Friday's episode, and all of that. It's going to be a crazy night. But with that being said, I ain't got much more thoughts on it. This is just my thoughts on the episode. It was your standard house show, but that's not a negative thing. Like I don't want to be taken that it's like or this wasn't like the greatest event ever. Triple H, but here's my last thing I'll say, right? Because I left Survivor Series thinking, okay, well, Survivor Series was a dud because this event, Saturday Night Main Event, was going to be such a star-studded event. Triple H was just holding back for it. Well, he wasn't holding back anything. Nothing exciting happened. So my question then is, why was Survivor Series, why was War Games so bad? Right? To me, this makes War Games even worse than what it was in my thoughts before then, because I at least gave them the benefit of the doubt that they were holding back for Saturday Night Main Event. But he wasn't holding back for Saturday Night Main Event. It was just a bad show. Right? And so you have to question that. You really do have to question that, right? So you leave this and this is essentially the last big event of the year for WWE. Which, like, I intentionally scheduled the award show after Saturday Night Main Event solely because just in case something big happened, right? I wanted to finish out the big calendar for WWE. I don't anticipate anything else happening in the next 16 days of the year, the last 16 days of the year. I know AEW has World's End on the 28th. I don't anticipate, just like last year, that I just feel like it's going to be your standard PLE, right? And I don't anticipate it, really leading to anything. With that being said, though, thank you all for watching this episode. At least one more episode. That's on Tuesday. I may or may not do a World's End video. Probably not. I'll probably end up watching World's End just for the sake of it, but I probably won't make a video for it like I did last year. So one more episode this year, and that is on Tuesday. It's going to be me, DJ Wavy D, your standard host of the Slapping Me Wrestling Podcast, James and Cody, Nerdy D, and we're going to return to the show. Steel Chair Twan has accepted the invitation to join. So I can't wait to have this conversation, and I will see y'all on that Tuesday episode. Until then, y'all have a great rest of your weekend, and thank y'all again for watching. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. AEW, WWE, we're always on side. From fantasy booking to baddies that slay, slapping me wrestling every Tuesday.